This is a topic inspired by my students, mostly by the wonderful young men that I've had the privilege of teaching and speaking with. I'm also the advisor to Sigma Nu, and also especially Mr. Paritosh Joshi, who was the one who gave me the idea for this. So when did you learn what your gender was? And did you believe what you were told? This is a question I actually ask my students. You know, the body is the home of our soul. It's the seat of our identity. And we spend much of our lives trying to figure out how to live in our physical selves. Sometimes our body feels like an enemy. We have to make friends of it in order to understand ourselves. And the only thing we know for sure is that it's constantly changing. To make things more complicated, our society and culture are often reflecting an image back at us that we don't even recognize, mediating, telling us who we are. And to challenge the norm can be a great risk, regardless of how inclusive our environment might be. Every culture has a set of norms and traits and behaviors associated with masculinity and femininity. It is, though, important to note that these are not inherently bad or toxic. We like to talk a lot today about toxic masculinity and breaking gender stereotypes. But what we're really talking about, am I being too quiet? Okay, so what we're really talking about are those social norms that police our gender performance. Being masculine or feminine, even traditionally, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the social rules that dictate the conformity that we have to fall into. This is the issue, and this is what I'm reflecting on today. When we are talking about gender, we tend to focus on humans who identify as women, and gender equality is often a subtext for just men in comparison to women, but we know that there are many different gender identities, and all of them deserve recognition and equality. Today in the US, we talk a lot about the binary, male versus female. We love to shove people into that binary. And each aspect, masculinity and femininity, has a whole series of expectations that are actually nearly impossible to uphold. So, for example, what man or male-identified person can actually encompass all the variables that mean to be a man? So I watch a lot of TV. According to popular media, to be a man means you have to be stoic, hardworking, emotionally constipated, rock-hard abs, and a six-figure income. You also have to be a nurturing, sensitive, and inventive lover. You have to enjoy tools, beer, snuggling fuzzy animals, and children. If you're a woman, these standards are actually just as impossible. If you are a feminine or a female-identified person, you have to be fit, attractive, and nurturing. You have to be a perfect partner and a mother, because it's assumed all women want children. You also have to keep a clean house, you have to host parties, and have a high-powered career. And if we're keeping score on any of those, I actually have one of those traits. I'll let you guess what it is. I learned I was a girl when I was about 6 years old. Girlness at the time meant that I had different body parts than boys, and that was pretty much it. Boys were clearly the best, though. They could pee standing up, which was great. They had to deal with that ugly thing, but whatever, pee standing up. They could also take their shirts off to play. They could crack jokes. They could be loud. They could do science. They could do pretty much anything. They had much better toys and clothes. So in the manner in which children just sort of decide what they're going to be through wishful thinking, I decided I was going to be a boy. For a few years, totally worked. I wore my overalls to school, I was loud, I was active, I wasn't really athletic, I was mostly just dirty. I took my shirt off to play. I horrified my graduate student parents by saying I was going to be a truck driver when I grew up. I mansplained constantly. In the 70s, everybody had long hair, so my really long hair was hardly a gender marker. I may have been a girl, but totally nailed the boy thing. Now, I had hippie parents, yeah, big surprise. They took it all in stride. My mother gave me a story from this new magazine, you might have heard of it, called Ms., about a family that raised a child without a gender. It's called The Story of X. My father put me through soccer drills, he got me a baseball glove, he did make me take chess lessons. We actually learned gender-neutral language in school, and the girls loved to terrorize the boys by playing games called, compellingly, Girls versus Boys. So this really was a wonderful revelation for me. I could actually be something different. Now, there were people who tried to make me a girl, totally failed. I don't like dolls, so they immediately went in the closet. I did like Barbie, but I really just tortured Barbie. I would drown her and enslave her to the stuffed animals, and my mother would find her hanging from a leg from a piece of furniture. I think for years my mom thought I was a psychopath. And I really should say that when I compare how I played with Barbie stories with my adult women friends, we realized we all tortured Barbie. And like we just used the house and the car for like really gruesome staging, right? So that was great. But after a few years, I could no longer pull it off. My boy clothes were less tolerated. One year when I wore them to school for school pictures, they almost sent me home. I was told to be quiet, to watch my language, to laugh in a ladylike fashion. I even got lessons on this. I learned how to sit properly with your legs together and your hands clasped and your back straight. To this day, I stand like this, so I won't wave my hands around too much, and I'm aware of how loud I laugh. So my boyness began to atrophy, and I became silent and anxious, and I started wearing dresses. To make things worse, my body betrayed me, and I became really curvy and extra feminine looking. And the sad part is that though I tried to be feminine, I didn't get it. I didn't get girl stuff like makeup and hair. I can't even match colors. We were really poor, so we subsisted on handouts and thrift stores, so we never had decent clothes, according to the other kids. Going to school was a daily battle. But at the same time that I was losing my boyness, my friends who were boys were losing their girlness. I saw my best mates turn almost overnight from funny, loving, sensitive children to aloof, mocking, vicious bullies. Formerly gentle young men joined their friends in making fun of girls and making up rumors about their imagined sexual exploits. Excuse me. We didn't really call it sexual harassment or bullying at the time, but it was daily. Bra snapping, nipple twisting, vulgar remarks in the hallways, it was daily. It was a daily occurrence. Catcalling of women and girls by men on the streets gave young men license to do the same to girls in the halls. Just a rumor that a young man might be queer meant that young women could beat him up on a daily basis. When I asked my mom what had changed, why had all the men become mean, she said, "It's testosterone poisoning." I still actually remember confronting my very good friend Matthew. In the 4th and 5th grade, he was my best mate. We rode bikes together, we played football, we did stuff we shouldn't, and we shared a mutual passion for Star Wars. Matthew also liked playing Barbies with me. He had these really creative games. We'd dress them and move them around, we'd torture them, but still, it was a lot of fun. He was a funny, smart, handsome kid, athletic, immediately adopted by the popular set. I was a long-haired, buck-toothed, weird girl who was totally socially awkward, definitely persona non grata in the guerrilla warfare that's adolescence. In the 6th grade, he stopped talking to me, stopped coming over and playing, and I was hurt, I was bewildered, so I actually confronted him, which is not something I would do. I said, "Why can't we be friends anymore, Matt?" He said, "I'm not allowed to be your friend." I said, "Well, why is that? Who says?" He says, "The other boys. We can't be friends." During middle school and high school, women were being pushed, subtly, not so subtly, out of science and sport and into literature and the arts and more feminine, nurturing professions. And likewise, young men were being pushed into science and sport and out of the arts. Young men were understandably frightened out of the arts and into the closet in the 1980s. It was the height of the AIDS epidemic. And despite the rising gay rights movement, even a mere hint of being queer meant that at best, somebody got daily vicious verbal abuse, and at worst, daily vicious physical violence. Young people were being murdered on suspicion of being gay, like Charlie Howard in 1984, thrown off the bridge in Bangor, Maine, right down the street from where I live. Things have begun to change, and we now understand that gender exists on a spectrum, as varied as all the people on this planet. But I still see this binary, I still see people being pushed into one way, be manly, be feminine, without any opportunity to explore. So my question is, how do we keep changing? And more importantly, how do we convince others of the need to change, but do so with compassion, not just correction? Since we still live in a male-dominated culture, I think it's time that we really liberate men and give men the tools to do the work. So men, you are free to love yourselves, and you are free to love other humans as you choose. It is going to be hard, but you can do the work. First, you have to listen to yourself, because you can't hear others if you can't hear yourself. Second, really listen to others. Don't interrupt, say yes, but I think, or feel compelled to explain. Be silent, be wrong, ask questions. You don't have to agree, you don't even have to reach consensus, but when you're listening to another human, really listen. Don't just wait to talk. 3, shut out the noise. You're not enslaved to the identity that others impose on you. Make yourself your own best experiment. Explore the identities that you want to inhabit. If you have privilege, own it. Use it to help others. If you like playing football and listening to musicals and wearing great makeup, then you should do it. If you like to wear plaid and combat boots and dance the cha-cha-cha, you should do it. Do things because they reflect who you think you are and what you know you are, and not what others tell you. And be unafraid to change. Last, be an advocate and admit when you've been complicit in sexism. It is essential for men to step up and speak when they hear something sexist or racist, but to still do so with compassion. For example, the next time one of your friends decides, you know, all girls are manipulative bitches because of their last bad breakup, or they just called a friend a fag, correct them gently and say, why did you say that? And don't let them get away with it. Oh, I was just joking. It's not funny. It's time to stop laughing at other people's expense. It is time to stop using that excuse and reduce people to negative stereotypes. We're done with that. Like women, men are not just a sum of reproductive body parts and weird sexual urges. You're not all rapists and predators, but because some of you are, and because our culture has allowed predatory behavior to exist so long, you are the key to stopping violence. Can you imagine what changes we could make if one of our male celebrities actually admitted when they had raped or hurt another person, insulted a woman, bullied somebody, said that was wrong, and admitted why it was wrong and why they did it? Can you imagine the cultural changes we could make if we started stepping up and admitting when we had said or participated in hurting another man or a woman? And women, we're not off the hook either. We are complicit in the system every day by criticizing, denying the claims of women who have been insulted, bullied, raped, victims of sexual assault and violence, fat-shaming other women, competing needlessly on things, and belittling men for not being manly enough. Enough is enough. Everybody is enough. Things are beginning to change, and as we grope towards new language to describe ourselves more accurately in all of our wonderful multiplicities, I actually have hope we'll get there. Not just gender equality, but gender equity for everybody, so all of us can exist together on the spectrum. Our society tells us not to love what we see in the mirror, all those things that we can choose or change. Loving yourself and loving your body is the key to change. It is the key to global acceptance. It's also the best gift that you can give the world. Loving yourself, loving your identity, is actually inclusivity. Because inclusivity begins with self-acceptance. Because again, if you can't accept yourself, how can you possibly accept others? In her great choreo poem for colored girls, Ndizaka Shange says, I found God in myself and I loved her. I loved her fiercely. Listen to your inner God and love her fiercely. Thank you.